realizing
I
that
was just
not
gonna say.
everything is
Yes.
about you. Yeah. And we're live. And if you just noticed, Nastia has just admitted that not everything is about her, including this monologue. It is Friday. It is the 24th day of October. It is the year of our Lord 2025, and it is 8 o'clock a.m. in Washington, D.C., which means it's probably about 2 p.m. in Kiev. Is that right?
3 p.m.
3 p.m. in Kiev. And I am super excited. And I want to tell you why I'm super excited. I'm super excited about two packages that are on their way. One of them which arrived yesterday, the other of which is now I have the tracking information. So the one I'm not going to talk about is the one that hasn't arrived yet. I will do an unboxing video when the new Gobo projector shows up. We're going to do some tests with it. I have a gorgeous image of Kash Patel that we're going to just test it. I don't want to test it on the Russian embassy because, first of all, we got some other targets we need to deal with, and so we use them for tests. When we go back to the Russian embassy, it's going to be we're going to know how well this thing works. So we got a test Kash Patel test image. We're going to have some fun with it, maybe near the Hoover building downtown. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I want to tell you about a book that showed up at my house yesterday that I think of all the members of the Greek chorus, only the estimable Richard Wattenbarger will even be aware of its existence. And I want to tell you a story about being a 17-year-old kid and showing up at Oberlin College and walking into the Oberlin Conservatory music library for the first time and being shown a book that changed my life. And that book is the directory of tunes and musical themes compiled by Dennis Parsons, and this book played a pivotal role in my life, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to put it up here on the screen, um, and it has been out of print since the 70s, and uh, uh, it uh, and here's the thing about the directory of tunes and musical themes compiled by Dennis, spelled like he was Ukrainian, by the way. Parsons, he was not Ukrainian. Um, most dictionaries of musical themes, which are super, super useful if you hear, say, a book, a tune, and you can't identify it, and you want to look it up, and what do? And um, and there are now apps for that for pop music, but they don't work for classical music. And so you hear a theme and it gets stuck in your head and you can't figure out what it is. And so the traditional answer to this is to have a dictionary of musical themes. And there is a very famous one that has tens of thousands of them. But there's a problem with it, which is you have to be able to write out the theme in musical notation and then compare it to the thing. And my music literacy is pretty good, but I am not capable of hearing a theme and writing it out, particularly because my pitch isn't perfect. How do you know what the um, you know there are all kinds of you have to be a better musician than I am to hear a theme and just write it out accurately enough to then compare it to a list of musical notation themes. So, um, yes, Joe says you need to take an oral theory course or two. That is exactly right. And you also need there's a bunch of skills that you need to do that. And Dennis Parsons knew this. And so he figured out, or I think his father actually figured out, uh, in the 20s or 30s an incredible system for um, a different way to do it. And it was to focus entirely on the direction that the tune was going. Did it go up or down, or did it stay the same? And if you just identify the directional momentum of the first 16 intervals of any piece of music, it will uniquely, it's like a fingerprint. It will identify. So you sing it to yourself. Let's say you're thinking about a tune that you hear that goes da 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 da. So you sing 17 notes. You need 17 notes to get 16 intervals, because the intervals are the ones between the things. And you say the first one, did it go up or down? But oh, it went up. So you write a U. And then da da, it went down. You do that 16 times. That will uniquely identify a tune. And then here's what happens. Whoops. Let me pull this up. Whoops. Oh, we don't have in this one an image of what the notation looks like. That's a shame. You can look it up, and it will say that that is a Brahms sextet. Opus, I don't know, I'm doing this off the top of my head. Opus, I believe, 36. And it works. And I remember being a 17-year-old kid, and I wandering around the Oberlin Conservatory. And when you wander around the Oberlin Conservatory, you hear people practicing, and you hear these themes. Sorry, Richard, it's Opus 18. Thank you, Richard. And see, I, it's good to have Richard around to correct me on the important things. And and I would hear these themes, and I would kind of want to know what they were. And sometimes if I knew the person, I could knock on the practice room door and ask them. Often I couldn't. And, you'd hear groups practicing. And I would run to the Oberlin Conservatory Library and just look them up. And here's the problem. Then I left Oberlin College and I forgot the name of the book. And if you just Google Dictionary of Musical Themes, it never comes up. The Parsons one with its own wacky annotation that works so much better and is so much more useful for uh, for uh, people who are not of exceptional musical literacy. And the other day, I hunted it down. And I hunted it down by Google stalking the algorithm that Parsons used and just kind of Googling around the subject until the Parsons methodology came up and the story of him and his dad. And I ordered a copy of it. And it showed up yesterday. And I have seldom been more delighted to open a package, people. I didn't do an unboxing video about it because it would have required so much explanation, but I'm giving you that explanation here, right now, and I'm telling you, I'm a man of simple tastes, simple excitements, and when the Dennis Parsons book showed up, I did a little happy dance and I tested it with a couple themes to make sure it still worked, and it does. And I just want to say that the sun is shining, the birds are chirping. It's gonna be a great fucking day. And you are watching Dogshirt TV, and it is a goddamn revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features is that when I buy the most nerdy dictionary that I have spent 30 years kind of wishing I had a copy of and that I could have just asked Richard Wattenbarger because he would know this, and Um, but I never did. And then I'm going to tell you about it when it happens, and I'm really excited about it. And another one of the revolutionary features is that sometimes Nastia is working on an essay and she means to have the essay published and she agrees to come on and talk about the essay. But then the essay turns out to be complicated and she's gotten comments
Really
from
fucking
a
complicated.
bunch of people, including our friend Kat and including me, and she's holding the
And my high
piece
school English teacher,
and
who's
her high
about to
school
edit
English
it.
teacher and Eric Charamella. And there are lots of people have given her comments, and she's trying to incorporate the comments because she wants the essay when you read it to be spectacular. And in
That
addition, the Russians have knocked out power all over Kiev. And so I invite her on to talk about the essay, and we decide we're not talking about the essay. We're talking about power outages and ballistics. Um, and then a third thing happens, which is that we have a conversation about language politics in countries all over the world as part of discussing this essay. And I mention the fact that there's a really interesting set of examples of this in Africa, including the language Swahili. And I happen, in a Marshall McLuhan like way, to have a Swahili expert right here in Holly Berkley Fletcher, who is going to be joining us. And so the show goes from being about um, uh, Nastia's essay on language politics in Ukraine to being a monologue about the dictionary of directory of tunes and musical themes compiled by Dennis Parsons, leading into a discussion of ballistics and power outages in Kiev, leading in turn, whenever Holly eventually shows up, to a question that I'm going to pose to her about the role of Swahili in post colonial Africa. All of which is a long winded way of saying that we are not allowed to have fun anymore. But, you know, we're doing our best. Nastia, how are you?
That was so long, Ben.
It was
People in
only
the
13
audience,
minutes long.
and myself included, had like three different conversations going in the chat.
Well, I just want
Um,
to say that that's fine. I don't really expect anybody actually to listen
I
to
know you
me,
don't care about anything.
and
I
it
know.
and it amuses me to no end that 28 people plus you have shown up for this, despite the fact that they had every reason to think that I was going to go off on some silly rant. But I'm sure it moved Richard Wattenbarger. Richard can tell me if I'm full of shit about that too. But anyway,
There were people who appreciated it in the chat. So,
um, you are uh, do you have power?
I do. My lamp is working and my Wi-Fi is working. Um, the power came on, I think, a few hours ago, and it's gonna go out in less than 2 hours.
And is that planned or is that just a prediction on your part?
No, that's planned. So essentially, pretty much most areas of Ukraine right now have power outages. And so what happens is that the government and state-controlled energy companies, they, through a very complicated calculation, create basically a schedule for all the addresses. I have no idea how you do this, but it's insane to me. But they create the schedule where everyone can go on a website of the state, either a state-owned company or like the largest energy company in Ukraine, DTEC. You can go on their website, put in your address, and it's gonna show you like where the power outages are gonna be today, and sometimes tomorrow as well. And so, for example, today I think we have, let me check. It's like less than 10 hours of electricity. Like we have more hours in the day without electricity than with, is my point. Um, and so uh, so actually I may be wrong, it's around the same. So from 7 to 12, I didn't have any power in the morning. And then from 5:30 until 10 p.m., I'm not gonna have any power, which is annoying because that's like dinner time.
So Kate asks, are generators common? And whoops, Nastia has just vanished. Um,
I'm here.
and the answer, Kate, is yes, generators are extremely common, and some of them are very large, and most businesses have them. Um,
Yeah, I'm writing my whole like my entire, not my entire, but like I usually write my newsletter on Fridays. If you guys are not subscribed, you're Ukrainian, I'm sure most of you are, because that's most of people who are subscribed to me are people who are subscribed to you. But I usually write the newsletter on Friday, so I was writing it today, and I do like an in-depth description of the generators, the power, all of that. Um, Holly.
Hello, how are you? I'm feeling lazy today, so I'm like I'm doing no camera and I'm in bed. But I heard you guys had a Swahili question, so
we do have a Swahili question. Should we front load the Swahili question?
I don't know. How is Nastia? Nastia, how are you? I love your scarf.
Yeah, thank you. It's cold in my apartment, which is why I'm wearing it, and like two sets of socks. Um, but yeah, I'm good. But we have power outages, and
Oh.
we don't have the heating yet.
Hmm.
Because, I mean, Ben, do we want to go into this description, or do we want to
Yeah,
front
no,
load the Swahili one?
let's do the power conversation because there are
Okay,
some important political dimensions of that, and there are some other
sure.
dimensions of that, and then we will switch to the Swahili conversation, um, which we will not conduct in Swahili because that would be a
Shagalabagala.
Is
shagalabagala.
Yeah.
that an actual Swahili phrase?
Yes, yes. It's
Oh,
not
I
a
thought you
phrase. It
just
is
said that for shits and giggles.
No,
no,
it's
but it's very fun. It's one word actually, so
So what does
Shagalabagala
it mean?
means like
Kashmar.
disaster.
Kashmar?
Like,
I love it. Oh
um,
my God. I love
uh,
it.
um,
Um,
okay, so
yes.
these power outages are the result of renewed ballistic attacks on Kiev,
And drone attacks.
and drone attacks, and
It's
I
not
have
just
been
ballistics. Yeah.
trying to figure out what is behind that. How much is just that Russia does it sometimes? How much of it is a response to the very successful Ukrainian drone attacks on energy infrastructure across Russia, and how much of it is a result of American policy? That is, that, we canceled a meeting with Putin, not that that was the wrong thing to do or anything, but that he wants to show that there are costs for being uh, we sanctioned some energy companies, although that was after he started doing this. And Trump has sounded more pro Ukrainian, or the administration has, in the last week than in the week before that. And so there's a sort of petulant, if you fuck with me, I'll do more bombing in Kiev. What do you think is behind, and how much of it is just that winter is coming and, knocking out people's heating is a great way to raise pressure on the population? What do you think is behind this?
Also, I think it's the latter. I mean, this is just, you know, in the words of a classic, motherfuckers keep motherfuckering. I mean, they've been
Yeah, we ought
trying
to
to
make
do.
that one. I I
I need
I
a t-shirt. I- or
I
a
think we
sticker.
may have to, as long as the
Then you need
slogan is
merch.
of
It's
Dog
like
Shirt TV,
Trump
as
merch,
long
but
as the
Ben merch.
motherfuckers keep motherfucking, there is Dog Shirt TV.
Something like that,
Yeah.
yes. But well, the point is that I don't think this is a response to anything. I think this is just Russia being Russia. They every winter, every cold season, they've tried to knock out our energy infrastructure, and just for the sake of making it miserable for the population, increasing pressure, uh, you know, increasing the amount of people who are okay with Zelensky signing an unfavorable deal if that means ending the war as soon as possible. So just plunging morale. Of course, it also helps the war effort because, of course, the war effort also requires a lot of energy, which is why we're hitting their energy infrastructure. But it's not related to anything in the short term. It started around the Russian campaign started roughly around September. Ukraine's long strike, like deep strike energy campaign, started earlier than that, like in the summer, and really escalated recently. But the Russian one started around September, and they've been sort of very methodical about it, uh, they do it every fall and winter, but this time it's different and it's a lot worse because A, they have a lot more capabilities, so like the sheer number of drones they can use is a lot more, and the drones are also better. And two, they're now not just targeting uh, like electricity facilities and plants and things like that, and substations. They're also targeting Ukraine's gas production facilities, which they haven't done before. And this is all very complicated, and my brain can't really comprehend how all of this works together. But essentially, um, there was something of a blackout, as in when millions of Ukrainians didn't have power. I think in 2022 or 2023, and it was short term, like it didn't last long. But since then, the winters have been like uncomfortable but bearable. I mean, the last winter and the winter before that, there were some power outages, but there wasn't anything like crazy. Like the heating, I'm pretty sure the heating never went away. And the electricity, like we would be out for like a few hours a day and then would come back, and everyone just got used to it. Like everyone got little. So how we deal with that is people get little power stations. I should actually maybe show one of them. Um, which everyone here calls EcoFlow, like we say EcoFloshki, which is actually the name of the brand. Not like the actual thing, but everyone just appropriated that to mean the thing.
Ekofloshki.
EcoFloshki, da. It's like, do you have an EcoFloshka at your place? Like
That's so
everyone just says.
awesome.
So this is what it looks like. So you like charge this thing, you just plug it into like with electricity when you have power on. So usually what you would do is you would have it plugged into to charge it at all times. So then whenever there is power, it charges it. So you don't have to keep changing it. And then you have like we have a little one outlet here, and I can use it to charge stuff. I can't open it here. And then there's some USB things. I don't know what this is. This is also something. Anyway, so this one is pretty small. So there is only a handful of things I can do with this. Like, I can probably only charge my small devices with it, like my phone, my computer. I can't like put in a hair dryer into here, I think, or anything more substantial. So that's sort of how people deal with it, and there are varying degrees of, as Ben and I recently talked about, like this could cost a few $100s or a few $1,000s, depending on how powerful this thing is and what it can actually power. Um, and so that's the electricity component of it, and then the heating component is interesting because most Ukrainian households rely on like a Soviet time centralized heating thing. And again, all of this is really freaking hard for my humanities brain to understand, but I'll try my best. Like, I literally actually, when I wrote about this for my Substack, I called my husband and I was like, okay, I need to write this shit. Like, where does our water come from? And he like literally gave me a very dumbed down, like for dummies version. So essentially, the vast majority of households in Ukraine rely on a centralized heating system, which means that the heating into like a battery like this comes in whenever the government decides that it comes in. So every cold season, the government makes a decision when to turn on the heating. And always that decision comes a lot later, to everyone's immense annoyance, than the actual temperature plunge that happens. So
Right.
every cold season, there's always a few weeks or a month when everyone is freezing, when the apartments are cold, but there's no heating. Everyone is mad about it, and everyone is like using some other way to warm yourself up. So you either have an AC, which pretty much all, like most households in Ukraine have, and you just put that on like the warm air. Or you have little oil-filled radiators, which is what I have here in Ava's room. I bought it this like a few weeks ago, which you plug into the electricity and you keep that going. But then there's the problem if you have a power outage and you
Right.
can't plug in your radiator into the electricity and there's no centralized heating yet,
So
then
if you
you're
have a,
cold and there is no power.
so if you have a big battery that can actually power the radiators,
Exactly.
then
Yeah.
you can't do that with the little batteries that you're talking about.
Right. So exactly, like Ben and I recently had this conversation because he was like, I should buy you a generator. And I asked my husband what kind of generator we need. And he sent me like a $2,000 version one. And I was like, this is ridiculous. But he was like, well, if you want to power like the
No,
radiator,
we're gonna get it done. We're gonna get the
then
Greek
like,
chorus is already
this is
planning
not,
this in the
Ben,
chat.
I'm not bringing it up to like,
No, no,
beg
no,
you for
no.
a thing.
You're not, but
I'm
I
just
am.
explaining to people how this works. Like, because like this is all like, but I just want to make sure that like people understand that I'm very privileged in many ways, and like imagine families who can't spend $200 on even this,
Right.
like even this, right? And
$200 is
so
a substantial percentage of an average Ukrainian salary per
an
month.
average Ukrainian salary is $500.
Yeah.
Like just so people understand, right? So we can sort of ponder the idea and put money together and buy a huge, like, well, not huge, but like a big battery that's going to power the radiator, so my child is going to be warm even if there is a complete collapse of all power. But a bunch of other families can't do any of that, and so that really sucks. One option of how to deal with that is that Ukraine has these like we call them punkt nezlamnosti, which
Hmm.
is the most Ukrainian thing you've ever heard. By the
I
way, Ben,
don't.
I like.
I can't
Go ahead.
parse either of those words.
Really? Okay,
Punkt.
that punkt. That's point.
Okay.
Literally just point, which could mean like anything. Like
Yeah.
point one, blah blah
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Point two,
Okay.
blah blah. It's the same.
Punkt.
Like punkt один, punkt два, blah blah blah. Or
Oh, okay. So this is like source point heating, basically.
no. Punkt can mean like a million different things. It can mean like a point, like a bullet point of the
Yeah.
essay, or it can be like a place, like a little location that you go to, which is this context. So nezlamnist is resilience, but it's a bit of a different. It's like when if you're nezlamny, you're unbreakable.
Okay.
Like that's literally what it means. Like nezlamnist is like unbreakability.
Islamist. Oh, Islamist. Okay.
Yeah, like
I thought you said
Zlamatis.
Islamist, and I was confused about
No,
what this
no, no,
had to do with Islam.
no. Nezlamnist. So
Okay, so it's a
Zlamatis is to
resilience
break,
point.
and Nezlamnist is to like not be like, yeah.
I
So
gotcha.
anyway, Punkt
I
Nezlamnist
actually
is
knew
like a
the.
resilience point.
Okay.
So, and what that is like a location point, like a resilience point, or like a location point somewhere around the city. There are hundreds of them, I'm pretty sure, or dozens of them, which are funded by like the UN or USAID. Like this is what your
When we used to
taxpayers
fund
fund.
things.
Yes, this is what it would be used for. So it's just a space where usually it's like foreign money, and they have like batteries, heaters, hot tea, blah blah blah. So it's a place where you can come, charge your devices, warm up. There's like hot drinks, maybe some snacks. So it's like a place that like if you're a poorer family and you have a terrible situation at home and there is a power outage, and like that's a place that you can go to. It's open, it's free for everyone. Um so that's the situation. Um Another update, And so, and so like the Russians have been hammering Ukraine's energy infrastructure like almost every day for weeks in all various different oblasts of Ukraine, in different regions of Ukraine. And it's looking really bad because they're targeting both gas and electricity. So there may come a time at some point when, like, if they hammer it so much that we don't have heating and we don't have electricity and we don't have water, like that's a really bad situation to be in. Um, we also have like I think we actually have a generator. It's somewhere there in like a big box, but it's like a diesel one. It's like one of
Yeah,
those
you
like
can't run
super.
it inside without killing
Right,
yourself.
and right, yeah. It's like one of those that the shops have. Like every cafe in Ukraine right now, you'd walk through Kyiv and you would see like near every shop is a little thing that's buzzing and the most annoying fucking sound in the world.
You know, it's funny though, because when people leave Kiev, they miss it because so
Yeah.
I run one of those generators to power spotlights, and a Ukrainian woman runs up to me at one of my light demonstrations and points at my generator and says, "It's the sound of Kiev,"
Exactly.
and she gives me
Exactly.
a big hug.
Right. Yeah. So I think we have one of those little ones, but they're filled with diesel, which my husband is at work, not in Kyiv, 2 months at a time. I don't know how I would even operate that or what like I can't. And then we also have a kerosene thing, also a heater, which sounds like it's not for indoor use, but I think that's what he intended it for. He bought it several years ago for like the worst case scenario. Like he's that kind of guy. Like he is literally prepared for an apocalypse. So we have
Prepper.
that. Sorry?
He's a prepper.
Exactly. Oh yeah, it's we have knives, we have all the things. Uh but yeah, so
Kerosene
that's
heaters are very common in lots of parts of the world as principal heat sources, and they're
I see.
totally
Okay.
unsafe. And a
Totally
lot of,
unsafe. Okay.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
Is
people.
this is this
I
what
mean,
happens
it's
in El
better than
Hol?
freezing to
This is
death, but
very
it.
a random example, but is that why tents in refugee camps like, lit up?
So I
Because they
don't.
use kerosene heaters?
I don't. I mean, they're one of the most unsafe ways to heat housing,
Okay, we're not
and
doing that, I
well, no,
guess.
I mean, it's important for, it's less unsafe than being in an unheated environment, but they're used all over the developing world, and it's dangerous, and people, they cause house fires. Um,
So then I also
and John
have
Hawkinson
this.
is right, that they've gotten a lot better.
Oh, I
There's
actually have a boarding school story with a space heater.
a space
And I
heater or a
also
kerosene heater?
A space heater. I nearly died in boarding school using a space heater.
you
How'd you
went to
So,
do that?
boarding school?
Yeah, but
Nastia,
Holly's
where have
boarding
you
school is
been?
real different from
Holly.
yours.
Where
Okay.
have you been,
Ask
I was
Nastia?
Holly
gonna
how
say we need to bond on
ask
this.
Holly
Where
how
in the
old she
world
was
did
when
you?
she went to boarding school.
What was the question again?
Ask Holly how old she was when she went to boarding school.
How old were you?
10.
Jesus. Yeah, I'm not doing that to Ava.
Yeah, please don't. No, like our school, very cold Kenyan Highlands, no heat at all, stone building.
Jeez.
Got very
Yeah, that's
cold
not
in at
my.
night in the rainy season. And so I brought a space heater from home. It was one of those coil ones that like heats up like to the touch, very, very hot. And we left it on overnight, which you should never do, and I kicked a stuffed animal onto the space heater,
Oh
and
shit.
we probably would have all just asphyxiated from the smoke because the room filled with smoke. But my one of my roommates had asthma, and she started having an asthma attack, and that woke everybody up. And um, so anyway, we woke up, but the room was filled with smoke, and we just opened the windows and threw the stuffed animal outside and went back to sleep, and we lived. So that's the story.
Okay,
Um,
well, the ending wasn't as tragic as I thought it would be, thank God.
so,
But anyway, my last point in this.
speaking of Holly's boarding school experience, very important announcement that I meant to make at the um, top of the show. We have to postpone the Mara Book Club live from Politics and Prose event that was scheduled for Sunday. We are postponing it by a week less 1 hour. It is going to be at 6 o'clock p.m. Live from Politics and Prose on November 2nd, not this Sunday, next Sunday. And the reason is twofold. The first and main reason is that I screwed up, and I did not know that a person that I have known literally since the day she was born was getting married on Sunday. And I will almost certainly still be at a wedding at 7 o'clock on Sunday evening this week. The second reason is that the very estimable Alicia Wanless is going to be in town next week. And so if we do it next week, we can have three of us live from Politics and Prose.
I know
Not just,
others who want to come, though. I don't know how logistically that's going to work. They're obviously not going to be on camera. I don't know how you're going to tape and anyway,
we are gonna figure this out,
you're
and
going
we're
to
gonna
figure it out.
and so all of that. Stay tuned. I will make the announcement on today's dog shirt, so you'll have it in writing. But no Mara Book Club this evening. Next week, November 2nd. If you show up this week, you're welcome to come into the Riverside studio at 7 o'clock on Sunday evening. Nothing's going to happen. You're going to be bored.
But you're going to make it 6 though, right?
It's going to be
Next week, 6
6 o'clock because
next
Politics and Prose.
Sunday, Politics and Prose.
Correct.
Flagship location.
Exactly. And to my friends at Politics and Prose, I just want to say, back when the mob would kill people and they'd pin something to their chest that say, "So die all who betray so and so." Look, if you do not have an event for Holly's book, we're going to do one at Politics and Prose anyway. There's no way Holly's book is not getting a Politics and Prose event. So I'm just saying you should have taken the opportunity to do it officially, because this is what happens when you don't play
And
ball.
I'm banned from Politics and Prose for all time. So
Yeah. Okay. So all of which brings us to the subject of Swahili. And the background to this is that Anastasiia Holly is writing a piece about language politics in Ukraine and the use of the decision by many Ukrainians, including herself, to not speak Russian anymore, though that is their first language. And so we were talking this morning about other societies that have made other decisions about, similar and different to the one that Ukrainians are making. The starkest contrast I can think of is Ireland, where there was an attempt to revive the Irish language. It almost entirely failed but what Ireland did do over the course of the 20th century was overtake English literature, and both in the poetry department and in many of the greatest writers in English are Irish, including James Joyce. And so we were also talking about the Hebrew revival. We were in honor of Ev Gamon. We talked a little bit about Quebec.
We were deep in there.
Yeah. And then it seems to me there's this other example, which I know very little about, which is this decision across a number of countries in Africa, in particularly in East Africa, that to use Swahili, um, which was, I think, very few people's native language and became kind of like a trade language that kind of got adopted. And so I want to just ask you to give like a little bit of history of the language. How did it become a kind
Yeah.
of lingua franca? Whose
Hmm.
native language is it actually? And what is the role that it plays in contemporary post-colonial
Yeah,
African
and actually,
society?
to your topic, Kenya and Tanzania are a very good ca they took two different directions with language, and so it's a very interesting case in point, or two cases in point. So yeah, so Swahili developed over a long period of time as a trade language. It is 30% Arabic, because the traders along the East Coast were at that time Arab, and spoke Arabic. And then there's some Portuguese scattered in there, because there was Portuguese traders along the coast there, and then there's some English in there, post the more recent era of colonialism, and then the rest are is derived from Bantu languages, which you probably are aware is a large grouping of African languages that are related and derived from a large people migration a long, long time ago, that sort of came down from more northern, and I think it originated kind of maybe Central Africa and went, or Western Africa, and then went all the way east and south. So there are Bantu languages all over Eastern and Southern Africa. I maybe some in, I don't think it's in the West anymore. It's mainly Eastern and Southern Africa are Bantu. Um, and then there's
And
other.
Bantu is a language family, or
Yes, yes, it is an ethnic family and a language family. And it's relating to one of the large migrations of people in Africa. The other one is Nilotic. Another, well, there's a few different ones, but another large one is Nilotic peoples, which, as you might imagine, relates to a migration down the Nile River, and that's another ethnic grouping and language grouping. There might be some Nilotic influence on Swahili, but I don't think so. I think it's Bantu, Arabic, and then a smattering of other things. Um, so it was not anybody's first language. It was not a written language for a long time until the modern era. But at this point, or I would say over the last few hundred years, it became the native language of coastal peoples in along the East African coast, and it became a native language over time, and is still a native language to those peoples. But it is a lingua franca, because talk about like language and borders. If you started going with language and borders, language as a basis for national borders, Africa would obviously be completely different than it is now. And it would be untenable. Like Kenya has something like 40, 50 languages. I don't know, if you get down to the subgroups. Um, so anyway, you need a lingua franca if you're going to have modern African states. And French is one. English is a big one, obviously. But Swahili it's sort of both dying and growing at the same time, because in places like Kenya, which Kenya designated English and Swahili as national languages at independence, but all of their official business is pretty much conducted in English. Their education is in English. And
Can I ask a question?
yeah,
So you said that it like you need a lingua franca in the African context to like build a viable nation, and all the suggestions are essentially colonial languages,
Well, because
i.e., I like what Russian is to us.
yeah,
So like for me, it's very interesting to compare that for the purposes of my essay, where here our nation building part of it rests on getting rid of Russian as much as possible, where there it's the opposite.
right. So Tanzania made the opposite choice. So I think the reason why, and the reason, and it's turned out economically to be very a very poor choice on Tanzania's part. That's what the educated class were educated in, is the colonial languages, right? So at independence, Kenya decided to keep English as the language of education and of commerce and business and all of those things, but to keep Swahili also as a national language. And over time, Kenyan Swahili has really degraded. I have to say, Kenyans are not, they speak lots of Swahili, but it's mashed up with English and other things. And grammatically, like I actually can have a hard time understanding Kenyans because I learned Swahili more formally in the classroom. And their Swahili is pretty bastardized. They make constant grammatical mistakes. It's pretty funny. Um, but Tanzania took the opposite tact, and their
Whoops. I think we lost.
founding leader
Oh,
made everything is Swahili. Everything is Swahili. All their education, all their business, everything is Swahili. And as a consequence, there's good and bad. Culturally, it's been very beneficial for Tanzania because Tanzania also has many different tribes, and Swahili has been a foundation they have a strong sense of nationhood, and they've had, and I think there's some other dynamics at play, but I think it's part of the reason why Tanzania has had a pretty stable history compared to other African countries. People usually credit Nyeri for that, for building a sense of nationhood, and Swahili being a big part of it. Economically, combined with his socialist policies, Swahili has been pretty disastrous for Tanzania because obviously, I mean, just getting textbooks in Swahili, medical textbooks, for instance, you just can't. It really it's not like Ukrainian, where I assume there's a lot of books and resources, and because there's probably a lot more economic development behind that. Swahili, I mean, even as someone who studies Swahili, it's hard to find books, period, written in Swahili. And so and then of course, like if you're working in international sort of commerce and context, it really put Tanzania on a back footing. Probably not as much as their socialist policies, of course, but it's been a detriment. And still to this day, you go to Kenya, you go out into the remotest, well, some of the northern areas that tourists don't really go to. But if you go to kind of where the majority of the population is living, you will always, if the exact person you approach first doesn't speak English, the next person will speak English, or their friend will speak English. Like Kenyans speak very, very good English, and that's been a tremendous boon for them to get educations abroad, to work in international companies. And, there's just really no comparison versus Tanzania. Like you go to Tanzania, even in major cities, and many people don't speak English. And so that's really a kind of a problem. Um, so I say Swahili is dying because again, Kenyans are not speaking very good Swahili, and Tanzanians are increasingly compelled to speak English as well as Swahili. But on the other hand, it's kind of growing on the continent. Like South Africa has instituted it as a language that they teach in their schools. It's one of the languages of the East African community, and so those countries are starting to um, push Swahili as well. It's become kind of a point of national pride. It's probably, I don't know this for a fact, but I think I'm correct in saying it is the most widespread indigenous African language. Um, so there's no other that I know of. There's no other language that's indigenous to Africa, not a colonial language. Granted, it has the Arabic influence, so there's that, but it's been around so long, it's considered an indigenous African language. And it is, I don't think there's any other African language that even approaches the number of speakers and the area, geographical area in which it's spoken. So it's spoken in Kenya, Tanzania, parts of Mozambique, and big parts of the Congo. And then you can parts Uganda. For a while, it was widely spoken in Uganda. Now that's starting to come back a bit more. So it's very widely spoken. I don't know the numbers of speakers, but it's, pretty, it's definitely, I don't think there's another African language that can compare. So on that basis, other African countries are starting to teach it and promote it, and there's sort of a, at least as a educational matter, there's kind of a Swahili revival, even as one of the major countries that speaks it continues to sort of bastardize it, which annoys Tanzanians very badly about Kenya. So sorry, I rambled on,
This
but
is
that's kind of
so
the
No,
complicated.
but am I guess the question I would ask is, am I right? Or was I right? Or is this a good example of the proposition that I advanced to Nastia, that there is no correct answer to the question of post-colonial language choice by countries, and that there's just radical diversity among the way different countries have handled it, and the only thing that you can say is that what works for Kenya and Tanzania is, first of all, not the same between Kenya and Tanzania, but is also not going to be probative of what's the right approach for Quebec or Ireland, and that these countries just have radically different local politics that make language politics very hard to import from one country to another.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's sort of economic imperatives and practical imperatives versus sort of cultural, or you might even say moral imperatives, and so, and they're kind of, depending on the language you're talking about, they're kind of at odds. I mean, any country in the world at this point in the 21st century, English is becoming the international language, or if not become, I think that's pretty clear. So if economically, as a matter of economic success and integration and ease of business and all of those things, I mean, English is obviously a huge advantage for your population to speak. Any other language, I'm not, like, it doesn't, Ukrainians might as well go with Ukrainian and not Russian, because I don't, culturally, obviously, it's more meaningful, it's more of a cultural heritage statement, and I don't think that there's no disadvantage to them economically, versus, if you're pushing Swahili and you're militant, if you're Tanzania and you're militant that everything's in Swahili, that's, I mean, you're really disadvantaging, versus English. um you're really disadvantaging your people, I think.
I
Ben,
mean,
this is
So
the putting the language on bread uh,
yeah. Uh,
conversation.
Yeah, so Nastia, right before we went live, Nastia shared a expression in Russian that
And
is
Ukrainian
actually,
as well.
although you said it to
I
me in
said it in Russian.
Russian,
Yeah.
that is, it's actually hard to translate easily, which is why she said it in Russian, but basically translates to, you know, you use the language that you can spread on the on
On
bread.
bread.
mhm,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, the general the actual word for word translation is you can't put X, so blank, whatever it is that you're talking about, on bread, or you can't spread X on bread. So that could be whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be language, but in the language, it's like for like in Ukraine for decades, Russian was like the dominant language in terms of industry,
You
economical, blah
can't
blah blah.
spread Ukrainian on bread.
Exactly. And so that, and yeah, and so the intellectuals would be like, this is a government kind of problem. Like you shouldn't blame people first for speaking Russian. You should blame the government for the fact that they've made conditions as so that you can spread Ukrainian on bread and you can Russian, and that's why people speak it. So
Yeah. Yeah. So an interesting thing is happening with Kenya now versus, so in the last several decades, obviously there's been a lot of economic development and growth in Kenya. There's been a lot of urbanization. Nairobi's grown very big. The younger generations are increasingly well educated. And for the urban class, many of them are losing their mother tongues, their tribal languages. Like there's increasing numbers of Kenyans who don't speak their grandparents' tribal language, like Kikuyu or Kikamba or one of these other languages. And that's really interesting. And young Kenyans, like I said, Kenyans increasingly they can speak very good English, but amongst themselves, they're speaking a Creole called Shang that is English mashed up with Swahili. It might have some words thrown in there from other languages. And that is for young Kenyans, that's kind of a bonding thing. It's a generational
That
thing. And like these youth protests, they're organized online. And if I've been on some of these, I've witnessed some of these forums, not on, I don't go on TikTok, but like just on Facebook and things like that. And it's hard for me to follow. Sometimes it's easy for me because I always say I speak really great Kenyan Swahili because half of it's English. Um, so anyway, all that to say that belatedly, Kenyan Kenyans are using language as a national point of national bonding and pride, but just in a very more organic way than Tanzania did with Swahili. So
the
it's so
closest
interesting. I mean,
experience. Oh,
sorry, go ahead, Nastya.
I was just gonna say that the only like actual encounter I have with this sort of thing is in my first year of boarding school. I was hanging out with a bunch of Norwegians, not Norwegians, actually, so opposite of Norwegians, Nigerians and Ghanaians.
yes, opposite.
Like it's like Norwegians are so fucking white, and this was the very opposite. And so those guys and gals spoke African English or broken English, and I didn't understand it. It kind of sounded like English, like there were English words in it, but
They
it
actually,
also didn't
you
sound
may,
like English. Like it's interesting.
yeah, actually, a lot of it might just be accent. I find yeah, Nigerian English, I guess, is another whole thing. If Kenyans are speaking just like English, or even Shang, like usually I can follow in English pretty well. So
One of the things that I think, though, is really striking about current Ukrainian national language politics, though, is just how much English is creeping into Ukrainian. And,
Oh my God, yes.
so it
It's so
used to
good.
be that there was this, uh, it's a pidgin called Serdyuk, which is, a hybrid of Ukrainian and Russian. Um, and, um, and now,
Oh, you mean Surjik?
yeah,
Surjik. Okay, okay, yeah.
um, and, um,
Now it's a
and
different Surjik.
and now the Surjik is, you
Ukrainian
hear
English.
Ukrainian kids, and the number of English words that 15 years ago those would have been Russian words. And they're very self-consciously not using the Russian words for things. And so when they want something to reach to, they're reaching to English words. And so, okay, so for those of you who have some Slavic language background, this is a highly declined set of languages, right? And there's a good rule of thumb that foreign words don't decline. But then when the word becomes integrated into the language, you start declining it. And so you have these English words that are like, for example, EcoFlow, that you, which, is not, that is
It's
not,
such a thing.
and
Yeah.
then, but you
It's like the
treat it,
it's like vernacular here.
right, but you
Truly.
treat it in Ukrainian like a Ukrainian word. And
Do
so you
you
have like, and this, when I was studying Russian when I was a, 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 a kid, there was that was a no-no. There were foreign words, and foreign words didn't decline, and then there were Russian words, and Russian words declined, and there were some words, sort of like, that had come in from German 100 years ago, right?
Yeah. No, this is
Uh,
none of that.
but this is like the speed with which it goes from being an English word to being a Ukrainian word that people are just, treating like it
Yeah.
was, came
Let me think of
from
other
is
examples.
that
came
is
from
that like a
Ukrainian,
is
18th century poetry.
is that is that like a anti-Russian statement, or is it just an example of how, especially for the younger
Uh,
generation in the
Ben,
internet era, English is becoming so prevalent, and
Yes,
American
both.
culture
it is
has been
both. And
so,
but
yeah, okay.
yeah, well, American culture these days kind of sucks. But
No
it's
argument there.
okay. So the young generation, a lot of us work in English or with English. So even Ukrainians my age who are like in creative industries, who are like SMM, whatever, or communications people, like we all do some work, or like young Ukrainians who work at the Tony Blair Institute's office in Kyiv. Like that kind of dynamic. Like we all work in English or with English. And so all of these words creep in, like, I don't know, like deadline, for example. Deadline, like a deadline, but deadline is like completely a part of that vernacular. Zoom, like I have to run because I have a Zoom call. You would be like, мені надо бежать, тому що в мене Zoom. Like people
Yeah,
just say
but let me
Zoom.
wait. Let me give an example that will be, I think, more pointed to this audience. Okay,
Okay.
so the word meeting in
I mean,
Ukrainian
oh yeah, that's fun.
means protest. But
Meeting,
now people
right.
use it to just mean a meeting.
Yeah,
And
but right. Yeah. But it's a little different because in Ukrainian it's meeting. It's like the the same we that's in Kyiv, which is hard for Americans to pronounce, the Y sound. But meeting is like the E. It's like kind of sounds like Russian. Meeting. So it's slightly different, but
okay,
it's similar
but the
at the same
point
time.
is, there are plenty of normal Ukrainian words for a meeting.
Oh, another one is
Zustrit,
skill. Another one is skill. Like the word skill, like skilly. We say skilly.
right?
Uh,
So, so
again,
that
part of the vernacular.
so 20 years ago, those words are coming from Russian, and now
Yeah,
those words are coming from English. And I think that is both a reflection of globalization, but it is also a reflection of a conscious desire to be not influenced by Russian. And so,
right.
um, you know,
But there are
all
also
right,
so many fucking Westerners here, like more than Ukrainians at times, it feels like. I mean, you
all
walk
right,
into a
we gotta go,
cafe in
folks.
downtown Kyiv and everyone speaks English. Okay, I'm done.
And no, Matt, disaster is only one of those words in the Nastia household.
Disaster.
Uh, and you're spelling it wrong. It is spelled Deezastor.
Well, that's
Disaster.
according to you. According to us, it's just disaster. That's when my daughter does literally anything. I just scream that.
We're gonna be back. It's gonna be Monday. It's gonna rock. Until then, keep the faith. Look up themes in musical themes using the Parsons notation. And folks, you know, keep smiling.